And we're live. Welcome back to This is Dunder Moose. I've got a special guest, returning guest, DM Blackwall. The first time I had him on, I didn't know about his game. I was learning from the man himself, and now I have driven to his where he lives. I have played the game. I have a hard copy. Horde Wars Basic is sitting right here on my table. Welcome back to the show, DM Blackwall. How you
Thanks,
doing, man?
man. It's good to be here.
So it's not just because we had fun together playing the game, but you've got some rather big news. Something has just launched recently, and if anybody looked at the thumbnail, they probably already know. The Horde advances. What is
Indeed.
going on with you, bro?
Indeed. So Horde Wars Advanced released last week, Wednesday. And yeah, it's the sequel book. You're going from 180 pages to 300.
Yeah.
And
Well,
just,
we were talking about this right before. I mean, the basic version is not a small. This is hefty, and it's the basic version. The advanced one's coming out 300 pages.
yes, yes. And in real measurable ways, you're getting equal or greater content than you'll find in a trio of books from Paizo or Wizards of the Coast.
Right. And you don't got to pinch your nose to read it either,
Well, thank you.
which I can't say about the other two.
Well, but really though, you're like Beasts and Monsters alone. We're at 200 plus stat blocks. That's a monster manual worth, actually.
Yeah.
Plus, we're giving you a bunch of NPC stat blocks as well.
Well, and spells and just
Yep.
all the stuff.
Yep.
So,
Spells, magic items, careers. So we're giving you 21 plus the various capstones and level ups, which
yeah.
is, given how you build characters in our game, a lot more than you're going to
Yeah.
find in like a player's handbook.
But don't get overwhelmed by 21 careers because each player gets two, right? You're not
Yeah.
locked
Yeah.
into one class.
Correct.
Your character is kind of the combination between the two. Um,
Exactly.
so let's see, we got some chat going already. Representing Port Haven from the Gilded server says
Oh,
Anubis.
wonderful.
I'm not sure what that means.
He lives also in our state.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah.
Jack of all sin wants to know how everyone's doing. We're doing great, man. It's good to be with you guys tonight. So, even with the basic one, and I mean, guys, this is, you're getting color. This isn't like just a really awesome cover and then black and white throughout. You're getting some amazing. I love the Goblin King. Let me see if I can find him.
Thank you.
What what was it that made you say we're committed to getting this into one book? Because, like you say, this could have been a player's book, a monster book, and a magic book. You could have split it out.
Sure.
What is it about having it all in one that was like something that was important to you?
Well, basically, Nate and I felt, he's my co-author and business partner. We felt that
I tried to get him on tonight, by the way, guys, but he's teaching
yes,
a class right now. So
he is teaching a
maybe
class.
next time.
But we felt that the business model that Wizards of the Coast and similar companies are following. Oh yeah,
There
that's
you are. That's
is
awesome.
is not good for the customer. It may be good for the game company, but you shouldn't have to buy over $100 worth of books to play our game.
Right on.
And now, obviously, we would like to make money, and at some point as a company, or at least break even. But that's why we sold our basic game and still are selling it for $7.
Yeah, that is
You can buy the PDF for $7. Physical,
quite a deal.
we're also selling at a fairly steep discount relative to production costs. And we're doing that so that people can try out and enjoy our game at a very low price. And if you are content with low level play, all you ever have to pay us is $7, and you can go dungeon delving to your heart's content.
And there's a lot there for $7. There's a lot there. But what am I getting in the advanced that I haven't even seen yet?
All right. Well, you're getting about twice as many monsters, twice as many beasts, again, roughly. About 50% more unique magic items. You are getting two different capstones for every career, as well as one for each species. So you're getting a total of what is that? 47 capstones for character advancement. You're getting
Was
more.
that hard to come up with the capstones? I mean, that's a lot of them too.
No, it was part of the base design of the game,
Okay.
and the a couple were more difficult to get working well or
Hmm.
phrased cleanly, but overall, it was part of the base design of the game. But you're also getting a whole chapter on expanded game master section. You're also getting a chapter on nautical adventures, a chapter on domain play. You're getting a chapter on our setting, which includes a setting map,
Yeah.
and three different adventure locations for each of the starting 8 nations, as well as descriptions of those nations, some heraldry, that kind of thing. Also, the starting area. So you get a starting adventure in basic, along with
Hmm.
some more adventures in that area. That also is expanded to, I forget if it's 17 or 19 different adventures now in advance that are all
Wow.
in that area as well. We also have a section on mega dungeons. It's pretty short. It's about 3 or 4 pages explaining to you how to make your own mega dungeon and showing you
Ooh.
an example.
All right. Let's talk about that because
Yeah.
I was on a episode of Random Table a while back where we talked about mega dungeons, and I was so fascinated with it. I did my own follow up episode on my channel, but I'm fascinated with how do you create a dungeon? How do you create a good one? Do you have like procedural stuff for if they like reach the end of what you've prepped, but they go off in a different direction or whatever? Like, what is your mindset when it comes to how do you create a satisfying dungeon for players that want to delve?
Well, sure. Well, it depends on your goal. So a lot of dungeons are meant to be like a one session dungeon or part of a session where you're
Hmm.
trying to get there and clear it and get the item or whatever it might
Yeah,
be.
get the
Others are
rubies, solve
intended
the
for
dungeon. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, others are intended for much more long-term play, which are what mega dungeons are. They're meant to last across not a session or two, but typically several levels of character development or possibly the
yeah.
entirety of a campaign.
It's like a resource you can go back to again and again. Like you can do the overworld stuff, you can do the political intrigue, but like every now and then it's like we're running out of money.
Yeah.
We need some XP. Let's just go back to the old ATM, and if we can survive it, get some loot, get some experience, and maybe some magical items we didn't have before.
Well, and don't ignore the option of being trapped in the mega dungeon as the campaign. That like there's a
Trapped.
small safe area that the players are in, and it's in the middle of the dungeon, and they're trying to get out, and that's the campaign. That can also be fun.
Sorry, I got a little pop up window there. I'm still getting used to EV Mux.
But yeah, so basically, but we explain in the book. We define what mega dungeons are and
Mhm.
how to set them up. And broadly speaking, it is you want to get ideally you want to find or create your own map, or as you're playing, generate the map procedurally. There are many
Mhm.
good procedural generators online and in books. We don't
Yeah.
feel the need to reinvent the wheel there.
Right on.
But as your players are exploring this dungeon, basically you'll have divided it into sections, and whenever they enter a new room or hall or area of the dungeon, they'll be rolling on a table, and that table encompasses both traps, the possibility of nothing useful being there,
Yeah.
and a pretty high chance of opponents, monsters or beasts of some kind.
Mhm.
And there's also a chance that you'll find one of the boss monsters because in Horde Wars, the boss doesn't just sit around waiting for you.
Yeah.
They will move around in the dungeon and at any moment could be in the next room.
Right on.
And it's possible also to find some of their actual minions. So, for example, let's pretend there was a lich in one area of the dungeon and you found some skeletons that he'd animated. Well, now the odds of him being closer spike, and you can actually use the presence of the skeletons to try to track him down.
Oh, nice.
And so we give you an example designed this way, and basically go, you can just do this yourself. And our example uses 3 sections that each have 2 boss monsters.
Okay.
So 6 boss monsters in total. But nothing stops you from designing one that has 12 sections and 30 boss monsters. You can do that.
Right.
But we wanted to give you something that you could reference easily.
So
Uh,
it's kind of a tutorial mode for like you can go however you can take this however far you want to, but
yeah.
here's the way to think about when you're creating your first dungeon.
Yeah.
Here are the things you want to put and what the things you want to keep in mind.
And how to kind of weight the odds. So
Hmm.
for example, all of the possible one other thing, you also do want to pre-design transition points between sections. You can procedurally generate if you want most of a dungeon, but you should actually know, what does the end of this section look like that connects
Yeah,
with the other one,
yeah,
or what does the entrance look like?
yeah. I feel like the procedural stuff is good in a pinch, um,
I
but
like maps more generally, but
I
I've
like
done it procedurally too.
yeah. Well, I was playing Blackworm of Brandonsford with my buddies. We were using can't remember if it was Forbidden Lands or Dragonbane or whatever, but they wanted to go somewhere that wasn't in the adventure. It was like a caved in coal mine or dwarven mine, and iron mine was. They wanted to clear it and keep going, and I'm just like, there wasn't a map for it, so I went to the first edition DMG Appendix A,
Yep.
and I was ready to go with them. And lo and behold, they hit a room with monsters, and the monsters inside were dwarves. So it was like perfect,
Oh yeah.
right? Like synchronicity, that can
Yeah.
happen. But it can also happen with procedural generation that it can be just kind of like this big vanilla bland. You
Oh,
don't really get a sense of anything going on, right?
oh, to
So
be clear, I don't mean to procedurally generate the monsters for each section.
yeah,
We actually tell you to build a table specific to that section.
yeah, yeah, I
But
dig that.
I mean
Um,
procedurally generate the environment itself. Like is is this a dead end? If not, how many ways are there out of this place?
yeah.
Um, how tall is the ceiling? How wide is it? Is this just a long corridor? Is this a giant square? Like what shape is this? Does it angle down or up? Is it flat? That can be procedurally generated if you don't have a map.
Right
I
on.
used a very simple system with D6s that um, was so easy to understand. I was able to have people playing Theater of the Mind start rolling with me to determine the information.
See, now that's key. I used to be a no prep guy. I used to be a zero prep because I was like, this is going to teach me book control. I do think it's good for solo play if you're prepping to be a DM. I think it's good to do zero prep and use the tables until you're familiar with them so that if you have to use them for your players, it doesn't take extra time. But it sounds like you took that into account too. You're like, even with the procedural stuff, it's going to be D6, it's going to be lightning fast. It's
Yep.
not, while they're arguing about what they want to do, I'll have it being built ahead of them if need be.
No, no,
Um,
no. And they helped me build it. What I mean is they started catching on what the dice results meant.
yeah.
And so when one of them would scout ahead, I'd have him roll the dice.
Okay.
And he would know fast enough to be like, "Oh no, I rolled a whatever it might be. This is
Yeah.
not the result I wanted."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
and but D6s and D4s, really simple stuff. It's not hard to procedurally generate a dungeon. We do encourage you to use maps, though. It is easier, um, especially if you want to describe more details in a room. A map can show you a lot more, much more quickly.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's the amount of stuff you're keeping in your short term memory, all the plates you're
yeah,
spinning as a DM.
yeah.
Um,
Now, mind you, I was just drawing it as we as we rolled
yeah.
it, but anyway, the thing is, we also want to incentivize you to want to hunt down boss monsters, not to hide from them. So,
Hmm.
unlike normal in Horde Wars, where when you finish an adventure, you'll typically roll for treasure, although there might be something else as a reward instead.
Yeah.
In this case, you have to kill the boss monster. Killing other monsters will yield no treasure. The boss
Hmm.
monsters have all of it, but they have
Okay.
double normal treasure.
Oh, all right. So
And
it's
so,
extra risk, extra reward going after the
yeah,
big kahuna. I love it.
yeah.
I love it.
Oh, and what I was trying to get to earlier with the table
Yeah.
is it's a single table that encompasses both traps and monsters, like that
Okay.
you're rolling for. And essentially, if you roll a trap, you re-roll again on the same column. and there's a chance of more traps, nothing else, or monsters.
Come on, nothing else. Oh, too bad. Nice. Um, okay, well, so the last episode, for those of anybody that watched Random Table, the last episode we were talking about prep, and I feel like we've kind of
Mhm.
already broached the subject here. Um, how do you prep for a session? Because when I came up and played with you guys, it seemed like you were just flat out ready. Like you had the map out, you knew the scenario.
Well,
Um,
if you remember, I actually offered you 3 or 4 scenarios,
that's right. That's right. You
but
said, "Do you
all
want
of
to
them
be a
utilized
defender? Do you
the
want to do you
location.
want to go on the attack?" I don't
Yeah,
remember what I said.
but all of them used the location,
Yeah.
right? And so, pretty easy. I mean, I've been running games for a long time, and so I
Hmm.
find it much easier than many people who'd be as a DM or game master. Um, Not because it is easy, but because I have a lot of experience to lean on.
Right.
And at a baseline, it is. It is fairly easy to run a game, especially once you know the rules. What is hard is to engage players and keep them engaged.
Right.
Um,
You don't want
Horde
people going
Wars,
on their phone while they're waiting for their turn and
yeah,
picking fights with each other or whatever because they're bored.
yeah. Horde Wars is designed to help with that. I hope you got to see that. Now you played with a larger group. How did you
I
feel
played
about
with a
that?
large group and it was action packed from the get go. Like we started off arguing about how we were going to approach. Just for those watching, well, go ahead and describe the setup as if you were talking to players that don't know all the stuff you knew. Like, what did we know starting it off?
Well, why don't you? You know what you knew far
Okay,
better.
that's a good point. That's a good point. I knew that we were attacking a castle.
Mhm.
I didn't know what was inside the castle, other than that there was he a demi lich or a there was a big undead guy that was trying to level up. Either he was
A
trying to
lich.
become a lich or he was
Yeah,
trying to
Lich trying
become
to
a
become an arc lich.
arc lich. That's the word
Yeah,
I was looking for. Thank you.
yeah,
So it was kind of like this is your last chance. If you don't stop him now, you're gonna need a lot more to throw at him.
yeah.
And so we were on horses and we were like, how are we going to approach? Do we want to just gallop in? And most of us foolishly relinquished our horses because we wanted to hide in the forest and scale the wall. There was one paladin who she brilliantly put her horse to good use later on in the action. Um, but yeah, we had so you had a map that had the keep. It was like this
Yeah,
curtain wall. You had an actual piece of terrain for the gatehouse.
correct.
So we could see like how high it was from that, but then the map also had the curtain walls going off on either side of the tower,
Yep.
and the buildings and rooms inside the if we were able to make it in there.
So if it helps for the people listening who can't maybe picture it, what we're talking about is 2.5D terrain, in
Yeah,
which some of the key pieces of terrain are three-dimensional pieces, but most of the terrain is flat maps.
yeah. So it was a full color map. You know, it had like
Yeah,
trees printed on it. It had the buildings that were printed were like just like walls, and you could see inside the building. Like you could see a
yeah,
floor plan. Like if you're having trouble picturing it, just imagine Clue. You know
yeah.
how you look down at the mansion. It was kind of like that. I mean, each room was in a different color, whatever. But so the map was just awesome in and of itself. But the 3D part of putting that gatehouse on it, and there were certain other scatter terrain that you had, like you
Mhm.
had an altar in one of the houses, and you know stuff like that. And then of course the minis.
Yeah.
Um, what I was not ready for is, I guess, what always happens in a game of Horde Wars is like the guys that show up when you first start the fight. That's not all the people you're going to be facing. The lure of the world, and correct me if I get this wrong. Zombies are on nobody's side. The
Correct.
Archlich was not happy to see them show up. Nobody's happy to see zombies show up. It's just when you start fighting, they get excited and they think it's going to be a feast and they just pour in.
Yes.
And
And
so,
when you guys defeated the outer layer of guards quickly,
mhm.
one of the Lich's minions decided to release the zombies they had trapped.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So it
Which
wasn't just it
is
wasn't just we made noise. It was like they had been rounding them up and
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh crap, release the zombies,"
Yep.
and
Yes, we might have to clean up the courtyard and kill some zombies or round them up again later, but fine. We need
yeah,
to get rid of
yeah.
these trespassers. Yeah.
So I'm like, "Oh shoot, there's gonna be some zombies, right?" And then who was it that you gave the bag? One of the players just hauls out this bag of D6s, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh no." And they just spill out onto the map, and each D6 was a zombie. So, so your characters, I don't know.
Yeah,
It was my first time.
you fought I think about 90 opponents in total in that
Yeah,
adventure.
but the first level characters, like they come packing some heat too. Like I had a spell. I've got my character sheet here. Um, I was playing my two careers were assassin and white wizard.
Hmm.
So the White Wizard is kind of an illusionist, kind of a freezy guy, cold magic, that kind of
Yep.
stuff. So I thought, well, as an assassin, being able to disguise myself would be kind of cool. I had one spell called Freezing Ray that you can use once in a session, right? And then you got to recover it
Once a day. So if you had multiple
once a day.
days go by in a session, it might be more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I was able to just like shoot my cold ray across it. I tried to just aim for the biggest swath of zombies I could, so that felt great because I could just burn them down, well, freeze them down, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, Little did I know that like the paladin who kept her horse was going to be. She went up to the first house and she had her horse kick the doors in and she rode in and there were three vampires right inside. And this is broad daylight, by the way, right?
Yeah.
So you have a reaction roll mechanic for the vampires.
Hmm.
And two of them
Oh,
were like, we need to get back into the deeper parts of the house where it's darker because
yeah.
daylight's streaming in. And one of them, he's got this chain embedded in his arm, and it is a long chain with a vicious hook at the end.
Yep.
And he's like, I'm going to pull her down off that horse. And he tries to hit her. And I don't remember what the roll was, but she made her chance to catch it. She caught the hook, the
Yep.
meat hook, and she wrapped the train around the pommel of her horse. And she spurs her horse back out into the courtyard
Yep.
where the vampire catches on fire. And then
Yep.
she says, I am going to ride this flaming vampire through the zombies and try to burn as many of them as I can. I'm just sitting there just picking my jaw up off my lap. I'm like, clearly she's played this game before. Um,
Yeah, well, she was trampling the zombies with the horse
yeah.
while dragging the vampire as he screamed to death as the daylight killed him.
Yeah,
It
just
took him about 15 seconds to die or so.
yeah. And everything that I'm describing happened like boom, boom, boom. It was quick and it was super like I want to say cinematic even. Like I could just picture it in my head what was going on. And so how much did like speed factor in when you guys were designing this thing? Like how much time are
Oh,
you trying to save?
oh, very
And where do
much,
you get it?
very much. So the initiative system one does save quite a bit of time.
Yes, let's talk about that for those who
Yeah.
don't know.
So basically, in Horde Wars, what you do is when combat begins, you roll for turn order, like you might in other games, adding your reflexes bonus to the die roll. You're rolling
Hmm.
d12s in Horde Wars. High roll goes first. That's all pretty normal. What's different is you then go around the table from there. The actual number the other people roll does not matter. High roll is what matters.
Yep.
If there is a tie between players and DM, player goes first. If there's a tie between two players, they get to have themselves a little argument or knife fight to
Yeah.
determine who goes first. It is not the DM's problem at that point.
Right. So, but and you've had people like rearrange where they're sitting. Like if they have someone who typically rolls high for initiative, they're like, okay, well I'm gonna sit two down from him because I don't let this. Like the planning happens before the dice
Yeah.
start rolling.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. You will definitely have players trying to manipulate that rule, especially if you bring a friend in to play a monster and have him sit among the players. As soon as they realize what is happening, you will watch seating rearrange.
yeah, is that what you doing, Nate? Did you have him like? All
Oh
right,
yeah, oh yeah.
cool, cool, cool.
I'd totally do that. I've also done that in the domain play online,
Hmm.
where I've had a player like, "Hey, I don't know who I want to play." I'm like, "Do you want to play a villain today?" Yeah. And so
See,
this player,
That speaks to my bro SR heart right there, putting a player
Yeah.
in charge of the bad guy
The
NPCs.
others had no idea. He was
Yeah.
playing openly. All of his orders were obvious, but they didn't know it was a villain and they didn't know it was a vampire
Oh
masquerading as a
man.
noblewoman who just liked to travel in the dark for some reason.
Was there a delicious moment when they put it together and they were like,
Oh, oh yes.
"You!"
Oh yes, and by then she'd killed one of them.
Brilliant. Brilliant. We got a chat. We got a question in the chat. Rump asks, ask Blackwall, does he appreciate hashtag Appendix N, or will we have to ship him off to the assisted living community? Whew, Rump. I don't know about the second half of that question, but like, tell me, like, what literary influences have led up to this game for you, if any?
Well, if it's helpful, I've read, certainly when I was younger, a lot of books.
Hmm?
At one point, Teddy Roosevelt levels, not in the last decade or two. And if anyone's wondering what that is, that crazy man read about one full book a day while president.
Wow.
And we know which ones because the lists were published.
Wow.
He was ridiculous. I did do that a bit when I was younger, reading a lot.
I would have to work on
So
my reading speed to do that. My internal voice isn't that fast.
yeah, no, Teddy was pretty quick. And the stuff he was reading was not mostly light literature
Hmm.
or fantasy literature. It was like some of that, but it was like technical manuals or political arguments or
Yeah.
philosophy or like these were not easy subjects mostly.
I
But in
think it's
any
so funny
case,
when people from our day and age feel like we're better educated or smarter than our forebears because
yeah.
we have penicillin and the internet. And it's like, if you look at what they were reading and how they wrote to each other,
Oh yeah.
like Civil War, like the soldiers' letters home are like so highly elevated language compared to, our we're back to hieroglyphics basically with all the emojis and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So on the whole, yes, I have read the bulk of Appendix N by accident before I'd even heard of it.
Hmm.
And when I started playing D&D, obviously I learned about that, but I would say my main literary references, because we were going for something a little different than D&D, which is largely Dark Ages medieval,
Ooh, okay.
right? So there is a bit of later medieval development, but gunpowder, you're not going to see that in Horde Wars
Yeah.
or even hints of it because we're not in that period. We're not in the 13, 14, 1500s. We're more like 900, 800 AD.
Well, yeah, you
Um,
can see like the bucket helmets on. I wish if you look at the thumbnail, I've got the art from Horde Wars Advanced, but yeah, you can see the technology level, spears and swords.
yeah. Now we do have some of the more advanced, prettier looking armors, but that's largely a question of if you can make good steel.
Hmm.
At and stylistic choices. But anyway, the point is we're more Dark Ages than D&D is intended to be. And so it's kind of a points of light situation. So a good analog would be Keep on the Borderland. But
Okay.
imagine that is the setting
Hmm.
where if you're outside of a civilized area, it's just dangerous everywhere.
Yeah.
Like you need to be near fortresses and towers and walled cities and towns to protect you.
The keep is the light of civilization in the midst of
Yeah.
a dangerous. Yeah, so Folder Bloat agrees here. He says the most read pieces of human literature in the 19th century were the Bible and Shakespeare. We are chimpanzees by comparison.
And
Right on.
so probably what I think I found the most inspiring for this was an account of the fifth crusade by John of Joinville,
Hmm.
which is a historical piece written in Middle French. I read an English translation
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say.
about a particular king of France and the absolute mess of a crusade he went on.
Okay.
If you're bored and you want to read it, you go for it. And it is tragic. Like if you enjoy military history at all, you'll
Hmm.
you'll see the stupid decision they made,
Oh man.
and know what's coming. Because that's
Oh,
what happened to me the first time I read it. I'm like,
that's
this is
the
going to end in
worst.
disaster, and it was even worse than I thought it would go.
Oh man.
But some of the
Tragedy.
really Yeah, some of the really cool things though that you get from reading real history by people who were there. This dude wrote it in his late 70s, early 80s,
Hmm.
but he was there in his 20s
Yeah.
doing this. Um, you get weird things like, so the King of France, after his crusade largely failed, spoilers, you probably haven't heard of that crusade, and there's a reason. Um, but after his crusade largely failed and he'd paid his ransom and was visiting the Knights Templar for a bit, um, he got a message from the head of the assassins, the old man on the mountain, threatening to kill him unless he paid them a bunch of money. They're like, "We can reach you anywhere," kind of message.
Yeah.
Pay
Tyler
up.
Durden stuff.
And he was freaked out. He complained to the master of the Knights Templar, who basically went, "I'll handle it." And within about a month, the assassins sent another representative with a gift basket, which they gave to the king, and called him their friend and talked about how much they loved him. And, and John of
What?
Joinville does not know what the Grand Master of the Knights Templar did, but he clearly did something.
I don't know if I would have eaten anything from the gift basket. When an assassin sends you a gift basket, you say thanks, and then you don't eat it.
Yeah, but this is like a real thing that happened, and it appears that the assassins were actually scared of the Knights Templar
They
during this
handled it
period.
somehow. It got handled.
Yeah,
Right on. That's
yeah.
awesome.
So hopefully that answers your question. I know that's maybe a weird source, but
I love it. I love it. I do feel like there's these little bits of verisimilitude that you can get from reading historical accounts. Like, what did they eat? You know, what did they call that thing that hangs down on this part? You know, that kind of
yeah.
stuff that my brain just doesn't offer up. And I don't even know to ask about. You know, like uh, camp followers and wagon trains and stuff that would be obvious to people that were there, but you just don't think about it from a game perspective. But it's gameable. It's stuff you can use.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. And I still haven't read the one his uncles wrote, but his uncles, two of them, were on the Fourth Crusade.
Wow. All right, Folder. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Back to my question about prep. So we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about how you prep for a session. What if it's not a single session? What if it's a campaign? How do you think about setting those up?
Oh, pretty simple. I write a synopsis with a main plot line, and then I don't mean a plot that I've written out or something. I mean just like here are here is your starting situation, and
Okay, yeah,
is
the opening situation.
here is the minimum amount I need to know about whoever put you in that situation.
Yeah,
And then you just follow logically or procedurally. Now, sometimes you'll want to introduce other plot lines, but often the players will do it themselves, which I prefer actually because they
yeah,
know it's their fault.
yeah.
Uh,
That's something I'm trying to get better at as a dungeon master. Is like paying close attention to what they're excited about and then being able to in the moment offer them more of the things that shoot their eyebrows up,
well,
even if
yeah,
that means improv or in the moment
but I
procedurally
also
generated.
but I also mean unresolved villain situations where, for
Hmm.
example, an enemy escapes. Who wasn't previously an enemy, but they decided to like rob his lair and he got
Yeah,
away, or
yeah,
his lieutenant got away. That's a problem the players created. That's a new villain that you maybe just rolled up as a random encounter that is now going to potentially be part of the plot. And you roll for yes, like fire. Uh,
yeah.
you
Unfiltered ID, by the way, she is infamous for using fire magic and yeah,
oh yeah, cool.
it's all gonna burn.
But the main thing that to consider there is rolling for or determining an opponent's personality and goals. What is it they want, and what's
Yeah,
preventing them from getting it?
setting up a
And
dramatic question.
well, it's also a pretty simple one because if they have everything they want, there's no reason for them to be a villain. At least not an active one because they don't have
Yeah,
anything they want to do.
unless
Um,
they're unreasonably convinced you're gonna take it away from them.
well, even then, that would answer the question. What does he want? He wants to retain power, right? Or
Right.
keep his evil kingdom. And
Yeah.
you're a threat, so
He wants you to go away, or
yeah.
yeah. All
And
right.
so we codify this a bit. We have you roll for NPC personalities. We did this in basic as well.
Hmm.
But we also in advanced talk about how to procedurally generate plots. Have you looked at that at all? I mean, I think you saw me do it a little bit.
I saw you doing it. I have, yeah. I've not taken the time I need to really learn this game. But like,
But this part's in advanced. What I was referring to, the
okay,
personality things in basic as well. Um,
yeah.
but
And
the
there's a lot of stuff just kind of scattered throughout, like the monster attack tables, or not tables, but descriptions. You know,
yeah,
there's world building in every part of it, right? Like,
yes. I don't know if you've ever played some of the more fun collectible card games, but most of them hint at lore that they never really explain.
yeah,
And Nate and I kind of did that with basic, although we did include some explanations in particular in the skills section. But in advanced, we do explain it. Like it wasn't hints at nothing. It was really just okay. We're trying to make a product that you can grab and play, and that we can afford to sell cheap.
yeah.
And if you want the more granular and the more advanced version of this world, then you can buy it. And if not, that's fine too. We are obviously excited about this style of gameplay, and with using the 12-sided die. And it is a style. Like there are
Yeah.
ways mathematically that actually speeds up the game. One of which is max roll is still a crit, so your odds of critting are almost doubled by rolling a d12 compared to a d20. But you also are able to save time by, for example, when you would have a penalty, such as you're exhausted or cursed or something.
Yeah.
Rather than doing a math problem, we simply have you switch to the next size smaller in dice. So you go from a d12 to a d10 to a d8, and so on. This mechanic's called
Just
affliction.
handles the probability for you.
It does.
Yeah. Well,
And that speeds up
unfiltered
play.
says more crit, please, and that
Yeah.
is one of the benefits of the D12 is a D20 you're not going to crit as often and you're not going to fumble as often, right? So in a D12,
Right. And d12, a natural one is not a fumble.
okay,
A natural one may cause you to miss because you weren't good enough, but it is certainly possible to be a highly skilled warrior, roll a one, and be able to just kill a normal person or hit them.
yeah,
In
just
fact,
from
you
your
don't have to be
bonuses and stuff.
well. You don't even have to be all that skilled. Like, let's say you had a +2. You're a basic character who hasn't even really focused on combat. You're just trained at it,
Yeah.
and you've got flanking. If you're attacking an unarmored human, the only way you could miss is with a one.
All right. Um,
So if you're,
I'm
yeah,
not finding the the goals, the stuff you were talking about. I'm in the NPC chapter. Is it somewhere else
DM
in
chapter,
basic? Huh?
DM, Game
Oh,
Master chapter.
TM chapter. Okay.
So I think that would be chapter 8 in that book.
Yeah, page 63.
And so you'll
Okay.
find a table that tells you it's entitled NPC personality traits.
There's a ton of tables in this stuff, guys. Treasure is not just is it gold or silver or copper pieces. Like it's
Oh, yeah.
wall hangings and tapestries and furniture and stuff.
And
Okay, here
magic
we go.
swords. And yeah.
NPC personality traits.
Yep. And so basically, you're supposed to roll up two of those to
Okay.
give you the kind of functioning personality for this person. Obviously, if you want, you could just roll one and have them be a kind of a caricature. But
Hmm.
to have them seem more real, generally you want to have two.
Yeah. So like you roll a d6 to go which column and a d12. So you could have like combinations such as uh, rude and modest.
Yeah. That's a funny combination, but it's
I
doable.
don't feel like talking to you about it. No, like, just having two of them to put together really does just spark ideas. I love that.
Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes you'll get two that are very similar, and sometimes you'll have two that are thinking about different areas, right?
Hasty and loving. Well, now you're Pepe Le Pew, right? Oh, mon souris chérie.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right on. That's cool.
And
That's a fun mechanic.
I agree. I think it's a lot of fun, and so that's something that we actually developed for the for another game that we're working on that we then went, this is good. We're just going to port this right over
Okay. It's
as we were
interesting to
working
me to
on
get the tidbits of
a
where the
basic.
little parts came from and how they made their way in. Um, One of the things, I mentioned I've got two careers. I like it that you're not locked into one. You can do two things, but I liked the color wizards
Mhm.
because I feel like there's two things in first edition that really slow down character creation. Well, there's a lot. One of them is you have to jump all over both books to make your character. And shameless plug, I did create a trifold brochure. If you guys are interested for playing 1E that tells you page numbers and what order to put that together in. And I'm one sale away from copper status on drive through. So if you're
Oh, nice.
so interested, but the thing I liked about it's almost like a kit. It's almost like a 5e. Like, well, you could have the what is it in 5e where you could have like the backpack full of stuff for a dungeon delver, or you could
Mm.
have like the scholars pack where they like just bundle stuff together for you. Because the two things that slow me down are I've got this money. What do I want to buy? And then there's a million options. And then if you just happen to roll up a magic user or an illusionist, or what are my spells? What do they do? And that kind of stuff. By having these focused schools of magic, it makes sense in the lore that like, well, if you study, you're going to have to study with a group of people, and these are the flavors of the schools. But it also mechanically just says, here's the things you can do. Grab us, write this down, and here's how you can grow in that class. And it just takes, as I said, the how long did we spend putting characters together? And this is my first time when we
I think
played.
it took you guys about 30 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, and we
And
were arguing about stuff like we weren't locked in. I think if it hadn't been my very first time, um, it would
depending on
like the
your,
next time I do it, it would go way quicker.
I think depending on your speed of writing,
Yeah,
or copying and pasting, as the
yeah,
case may be, um, 15 minutes. Once you're
right,
aware kind of what the options are, it's pretty fast.
yeah,
And that's again by design. We also by design made things faster with magic. For one, you can crit with all of your damaging spells, other than walls, because that would be weird.
yeah.
Anything that you like, a fireball or a
Just pick,
flare
see if
or
you can fit that in your head. Critting with a fireball,
well, yeah, because
nuke.
it speeds it up. One, because you're making an attack roll against flat numbers as the
Yeah,
caster, which is quicker than having a bunch of saves adding different numbers to those saves.
hmm,
But also, it's quicker because if you crit, your odds of removing more opponents from the battlefield go up, which speeds up combat in its own way.
yeah. And the magic users aren't the only ones that get those crazy powers.
Right.
There was a time when my guy, I'd used all my spells. I had like, I had tried to. Here's what I tried to do. You guys remember the scene from the Brendan Fraser The Mummy, where like all the people get brainwashed and they're like they keep saying Imhotep and they're like just like wandering towards where they're supposed to go. And there's one dude that's not under the spell, but he needs to get across a room, like a parking lot full of these guys. So he just puts his arms up and he's all self-consciously looking around, Imhotep, Imhotep, and they don't bug him. That's
Yeah.
what I was trying to do. I was like, I want to look like a zombie, and I tried to cast the disguise self, and they can screw up. It can go bad, and my spell didn't work. And I think I turned myself like all brown or something, or all green,
Yeah.
a bright green color. That
Yep.
was all. And so I went and hugged a tree to try and hide, and I was like, I'm done for. And then the paladin's husband, what was his character?
Oh, I think he was playing a huntsman,
Oh,
maybe?
he stands in front of me, and so it's not just magic users that can lay the whoop down with like a crit fireball. He had a special ability as a martial type
Hmm.
that if anybody moved in to try and attack him, he got an attack on anything that approached. It's like defending
Yeah.
wall or something. I can't
Yeah,
remember
it
what it's
was a
called.
feature that he had picked up, and that has and it has certain requirements to trigger. But basically, he was in the perfect situation, and they were trying to get to you past him, and he got a free attack against
Yeah,
everyone moving past him.
and the dude just turned into a blender and just like took a ton of the zombies apart. Like, the only reason I survived is because he was standing in the gap. Because
Yeah,
they were coming at me. That probably looked like a lime popsicle to him.
yeah. He killed. Was it like 14? It was a lot.
It was a ton. He did what I needed him to do to keep me from getting just turned into burger.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, that was a fun session, man. Um, so let's get a little more philosophical, perhaps. I can tell that this is something you know a lot about and you are passionate about it.
Thanks.
So, what is it about this hobby? What keeps you motivated for it? Not just to play it, but to improve it, to make your own game. And this isn't the only game you guys have going, right? Like,
Correct.
you've got other stuff in the pipe. What is it about this hobby? Because I used to, just to be quite honest, I used to be addicted to video games. Like, it was a problem, and it was like, you know, it would be dinner time, and my wife would be like, the food's on the table, and I'd be like, just one more minute, we got to kill the boss, and like,
Mhm.
so I had to cut that out of my life.
Yeah.
And I thought, I was gonna really miss it, but since I've been getting into this Dungeons and Dragons type role playing game type stuff, I have not even felt the desire to pick up that old game. Yes, you're right. Unfiltered ID. It's Destiny 2, which is a horrible game that does not respect your time. I tried to get her husband to play it with me for the first time, and he got so mad because we had to keep flying around to different planets to talk to people. And he's like, "They don't know anything about email. This is the future." I was like, that's a good point. That's a good point. But yeah, so I haven't even been tempted to play the thing that was my vice. So I'm asking you, as someone who's played these a lot, like, what is it about them that makes them fun? Why is it something that's fun to think about, even when I mean, maybe it's possible it's just a new addiction creeping up on me, but I think it's more than that. There's dudes that have been playing these games for 40 years and they're still
Yeah.
into it.
Oh
What
yeah.
is it about this hobby?
So I think, I mean, some of it has to do with fantasies, and in particular, male fantasies. Actually,
Hmm.
not all men, but many happen to enjoy war. I don't mean the actual thing of war, but the fantasy of war,
Yeah.
stories about it. And this is a way for you to participate that doesn't actually hurt anyone else,
Hmm.
unless you play a very different kind of game. Um, this is
1-to-1
imaginary or with
damage.
figures,
1-to-1
right?
damage. Just slap them. The DM
Yeah, yeah.
slaps them when they get it.
But really though, I mean, but also the idea that you can have probably some of the most complex interactions and stories and challenges that you can ever get out of a game, because it is dynamic in a way
Yeah,
that computers currently can't emulate.
they can't.
Um,
Folder Bloat says, "Yo, this dude got addicted to having friends and talking to people. What a loser."
well, that is one of the other things. This hobby encourages you to either invite people over or get out of your house and
Yeah.
actually meet with other people regularly
Yeah.
in a healthy way for adults and for kids, that you might lack otherwise in the modern era. Now, obviously, if you are doing other things, like if you're going to church regularly or if you're involved in certain other activities, you may already be doing some of this.
Yeah.
But it is actually good for you to spend time with friends. And
Right on.
and this hobby encourages that in a way that can't really be matched with computers. Now, you can play Horde Wars online. We do offer that as an option, Theater of the Mind, through our Gilded server, but it's not the same. It is still fun, but it is far better to gather with real people around a table, and not just for the game itself, but if you ever have run these games or played in them much, you'll see those people who may be strangers prior to that starting to become friends,
Yeah.
talking with each other about their days or about their struggles or triumphs in real life, before or after the session.
That's one of the interesting things about it is nothing that happened in the game actually happened, but you do get a group of friends with whom you share shared memories that didn't occur, right? Like,
Yeah,
and adversity that you overcame together that wasn't real, that was just all in your heads.
right.
Um, it's a very fascinating thing.
And unlike not all, but many games, there are stakes, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
Gambling also has stakes typically,
Yeah,
but the idea that you could lose something more than this particular event you're at right now, that there's a greater investment because you're playing often a character who you've had for weeks or months or years of real life play, or decades if you're really stuck in one game.
yeah,
But and so that the threat of that loss, even if it never happens, can really make the game feel more engaging than it would if you're playing a game of chess, which is over and done when it's done. There's no related consequences.
yeah,
The closest thing, I guess, would be long-term wargaming clubs with extended campaigns. You could
yeah.
have a similar feeling.
I've only read about those. I've never been in them. Like all the wargaming I feel like lately, which is mainly Warhammer 40K and BattleTech and stuff, it's just skirmish stuff. Although I've heard there's some BattleTech guys that take it to the next level and go full campaign and stuff. I've never experienced that personally.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like the BattleTech guys never get to do the silly voices. So
I do think some of the Wargamer folks will enjoy our next product that we're working on, which is tentatively entitled Dropship. We're
yes,
hoping to have it out in November, and it is a game where you play human soldiers being dropped off on alien worlds to kill aliens.
there's a
It
rich
is,
history there. You got aliens, you got Starship Troopers.
oh yeah,
Um, oh, what's the video game where you're doing that? It was huge for a bit.
there's tons and tons of them.
Yeah, yeah,
The point being,
yeah.
this is something people clearly enjoy, and we're setting it up to be squad based, up to platoon based, tactical RPG. So if you like war
Cool.
games,
Yeah.
it should be pretty close actually. And it just happens to be a role playing game, but it's very focused on combat. And the intent is that we will do another book, Lord willing, if enough people are interested in the base game, that then takes you to the stars, where you can do naval combat in space, and
Ooh,
where you
cool.
can do, you know, larger things with it, or play civilians if you want. But the
Good here for
yeah,
life game.
Helldivers.
Helldivers. That's the one I couldn't think of. Yeah.
Yeah. But the anyway, so that's something that we're excited about. And the funny part is, we actually got the ship rules done first. We've had those basically. I probably have to do a rewrite or an edit or
Hmm.
something, but those have been basically done for like 4 years. It's the character rules that caused us to pause.
Yeah.
And I wrote Horde Wars as an attempt to think about the character rules for that game. And then it was more popular with our playtesters, so we moved that out first. We've actually been working on the sci-fi game for longer.
I do feel like for whatever reason, fantasy, maybe not in fiction, but I feel like in gaming, fantasy often beats sci-fi for whatever reason.
Oh, sure. Audience size, it is fantasy followed by superheroes followed by sci-fi. If you
Really?
want, yes, if you want,
Superheroes beat sci-fi.
oh, definitely.
Wow.
In terms of the market share, in terms of the amount of stuff being bought and the amount of
Yeah.
people interested in buying that material, yeah, it's higher. So, so if you want to make role-playing games, don't start with sci-fi. Probably
Right.
not because you might not make a good game. You might because the audience is smaller. And if you're just starting out, that'll also shrink your audience because you're some random person.
Yeah, right on.
um, maybe
So you got to
start,
build your audience. Yeah.
yeah, start fantasy, start superheroes. Those both have fairly large
I
audience
don't think
base.
I've ever played a superheroes game.
That's not the question. Does it sell? Not if people play it.
Ah, yeah, that's a good point. I
Um,
have a couple. The recent purchase of I have Ascendant. and I have Heroes Unlimited. So one of them's from Palladium, and the other one is from Alexander McCree's, the Axe guy.
Yeah,
And I think my players would be interested in playing superhero stuff, but I
we've
just haven't done it yet.
we are also working on a superhero game, but that is on the back burner, not because it's not it's playtesting well. Actually, people seem to be really
Cool.
enjoying it, but production costs. So to produce dropship, we estimate it'll cost about $7,500.
Goo,
To produce our superhero game, it'll cost closer to 25 grand.
because of the art.
Yeah,
Is that why? Yeah.
art and also book length. Superhero game, fat book. You're talking
Oh yeah.
450 pages.
Yeah. Ascendant's a bug crusher. It's a gorgeous book, but it's a big old thickin'.
And once again, we want to sell you a complete game in one book. We
Right.
don't want to be farming you for money. If you like our stuff, buy other games from us. Is the thought,
Right.
right? Not keep having to buy the latest update to this game. No, no, no. We want to give you a game that is ready to play, thoroughly play tested, and that is essentially evergreen. That is
You want to satisfy players. You don't want to feed addictive consumption.
correct.
But
And
I'm
at
sorry.
value,
Yeah.
the one RPG book I valued the most, I would say, is the Rules Cyclopedia,
Okay.
because it did the same thing. It's not how their company set out to make money, but it is an entire game in one book.
Yeah. Yeah, I got one of those sitting over there too. I've got a shelf of unplayed. They're not gonna all remain unread, but yeah, that's I have. Well, I think I've shared my story on here before. How I started as a 5e dude, and then when I went into the OSR, I just felt like I was a collector. I bought a bunch of cool stuff, but none of it got played, and so now I'm on the same trip you're talking about, where it's like if it doesn't get to the table, if it doesn't put a smile on my players' faces, it's kind of a waste at this point.
Yeah.
So I like products like you're talking about that keep the users in mind, that keep the audience in mind, that they're not just making fluff to keep the mills going, but they're like, no, we want you guys to have. We don't want to waste your time when you're at the table. We want to get you a fun, active scenario that everyone can high five about at the end of the night, and it doesn't take you 6 hours to do it.
Well, and to answer your question, Harold, is because we don't think that's a good thing. Like morally, we don't think that's good.
Right. Well, I mean, so you talk about the Fantasy Flight Star Wars, Harold, and you guys all need to follow Harold. He's a creator as well. I've got my Star Wars role playing game sitting over there, West End Games, my original one, the first role playing game I ever got into
I have played that too. It's a lot of
when I
fun.
was a kid. I've got the role playing game, I've got the source book, I've got the Imperial source book. I didn't need the Imperial source book. I didn't really use it. They gave you a complete, and like I can remember the first time I went into a hobby shop. It was Ryder's Hobby Shop in Grand
Oh yeah.
Rapids, and I remember seeing adventures for Star Wars and thinking, why would anybody buy an adventure? Right? Because we were just so used to making our own crap up because we just had the one basic game. Like it was so foreign to me that you would, as a kid, that you would
Yeah.
buy that.
And to be clear, I'm not saying that we would never sell an adventure module. What I
Yeah,
am
yeah.
saying is you won't need that to play the game. It will not give you more content in
Hmm.
that sense. It might give you a story and a location,
Have
but
you had writers ask you about like if they could write
yes,
supplements for your game?
yes, about a half dozen or so. One or two of whom are actually serious and have done some
Yeah.
work towards it. We'll see how that goes.
Because like that
Um,
seems to me to always be a big question. Because like on the one hand, you're like somebody's excited about our product, but on the other hand, you're like, is it going to fit the brand? How do we
but
control what gets associated with?
But
You know what
it's
I
pretty
mean?
simple. We do not have an open gaming license. Not because we have objections to people making third-party content. Far from it. We want you to do that. We say that in our book. We say
Yeah.
it in Advanced as well. I've publicly said so many times. However, on the one hand, we own all of our artwork, which means if you are working on a project that we think is reasonably good, and we can actually help support you by licensing that artwork to you. I
Right
don't
on.
mean selling it to you. I mean literally letting you use it specifically only for that product,
Mm-hmm.
free of charge. That is a way that we can actually help someone making third-party content for our game.
Cool. That's really cool.
But the string attached is you have to actually play test it,
Yeah.
not just you and your people at your kitchen table, but have some actual play testing happen
Yeah.
at scale, which we're happy to help with, help hook you up with some people who are willing to give it a try. And also, you got to make a decent product. What by which I mean, it needs to both fit the genre, like not a spaceship one for Horde Wars that's
Mm-hmm.
not there, and also have done some decent copy editing and passable layout and stuff, so it's legible. Like
Yeah.
if people are going to buy it and be like, yeah, this is a third party content for Horde Wars, we want just enough to control to make sure that it actually is for Horde Wars,
Yeah.
um, and b that it's useful, because I'm sure you remember there was quite a bit of third party content over the years, for like third edition or 3.5 D&D or fifth edition D&D.
Mm.
Some of it's great and some of it is absolute trash.
And you can get a signal to noise problem where you got so
Yeah.
much cruft that everyone's just like, oh, well, this is a bloated system. And the other thing I'm thinking of, and they leaned into this, but Lamentations of the Flame Princess has very edgy, outlandish, sometimes disgusting content, and they revel in that.
Yeah.
If it were my product, I wouldn't want somebody writing something really gross, borderline pornographic, and saying, "Hey,
Right.
no, this is Dunder Moose's game, and we're just making it." I'd be like,
Yes.
"Don't paint me with that brush, bro." You know.
Yes.
So that's another thing that strikes me. But again, I'm not a publisher or anything like. Well, I guess I am. I have a trifold brochure.
Yeah. But so, for example, let's pretend you wanted to write a adventure module for
Hmm.
Horde Wars. That wouldn't be a problem. Just once you've got your like draft ready, you're going to want to get some play testers that we can talk with and go, hey, did you like what this guy wrote? And if you don't have any, we can ask some people on our Gilded server or people we know in real life. When we say in the front of our book, thank you to over 100 people who helped us,
Yeah.
we mean it. We had thousands of hours of playtesting by
Yeah.
over 100 real life people, not bots or anything, people we know. Because Nate and I have had the advantage of, I mean, we've both moved around a bit, but we also have both game mastered and mentored people who currently game master as well.
Right on.
So,
Well, and you were telling me about one of your players who's like already rolled up 50 characters in basic, and
yeah,
how many did you have to slightly edit for advanced?
3.
Three. Okay, so there were three that had some slight changes from
Yeah.
basic to advanced, but he was making a point to me just about how compatible the two are.
Yes.
My thought was, you got a dude that rolled up 50 characters. Like there is some passionate support. The people that playtest this stuff, they mean that stuff, yo.
Yeah. But another example would be if you wanted to do Horde Wars third party content, what we would probably do is have you try to match like our not our specific trade dress necessarily, but our
Yeah.
like physical book size, where
Mm-hmm.
we're doing
So it
the
would
eight
look
and a
good
half
on
by
the shelf
11.
next to it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In part because one of the guys we've talked with, actually two of them, may want us to sell if they get their products finished, this product for them when we go to conventions.
Oh, okay. Well, and
And
through your well, let's go ahead and get the link to your I'll put that in the chat. Sorry, you go ahead. I'll
yeah, and so Harold, yes, I have no objection to third party content working with us to avoid, yes, pornography, and also, frankly, things that are unrelated to the game that, that we are selling. But beyond that, no, we're super excited. People are happy for our product. I found out like 2 weeks ago about a game group I had no idea existed because the game master replied to me on Twitter when we did an announcement for the book the PDF release, saying, "Hey, my players are going to be so excited because we've been playing basic and now we get to introduce this new content." That was super cool to hear. I have no
Hmm.
idea where that dude lives, but there's a whole group of players who we didn't know existed until a week or two ago, which is
Yeah.
great. And we've inferred from sales that there appears to be an active group in England. By the way,
Cool.
if you are one of those players and you happen to catch this stream or another one, and you want us to send people to you, one of you should join the Gilded server.
That's right. And
But like right when we released, several people in England, and I think in roughly the same geographic area, all bought it like the same day, which is why I'm pretty sure there's an active group there.
yeah, yeah, cool. And if you buy Horde Wars, even the $7 PDF, it comes with an invite to the Gilded server. Is that
Oh yeah,
still accurate?
yep, yep.
Cool.
Yep,
So
and
there's
the advanced is on sale right now for $15. It will be 20 later. The reason for the price is, or because for the difference is, we wanted to give our current customers and anyone who happens to jump on board early a discount
hmm
almost equal to their purchase price. Basic sold originally for $5, later moved up to 7 because
yeah,
of the percentage drive-through RPG takes.
yeah. Drive through likes to take their cut, don't they?
They do, they do, and
Oh,
so.
I could have
Um,
been 100 air by now.
but that so we're trying to do that for our customers, and then the physical book, is up for pre-order in the United States only for shipping right now.
Hmm.
If you live close, we can maybe work something out. For example, if you lived in Mexico and wanted to slip across the border legally, hopefully,
Well,
we
yeah, you
plan to
better
be in
now.
Texas later this year.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't be that hard to arrange a meetup to hand off some books. Same deal if you're in Canada. We live in Michigan. It is possible to arrange something if we timed it right.
Right on.
But in general, international shipping is just goofy. Like it would cost more to ship the book than the book costs.
Yeah.
Um,
I picked this up when I played with you, and like a dunce, like an absolute noob, I did not get any signatures on the first page. So I'm gonna have to get back up there. Hopefully in February it'll work out to play advanced. But I need to go back, if for no other reason than just to get Todd and Nate to sign my book, so that I got the original with the signatures in it.
yeah. Oh, by the way, one of the guys you played with is in chat. Do you see Flashbang there?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
rock on, man. You feel free to tell them in the chat what type of a player Dunder Moose really is in real life. The
I would
dude's a
I would
dunce.
say adventurous.
I tried some stuff that worked out. I tried some stuff that didn't work out.
Yep.
That's how it goes.
um, Ice entrapment scheme.
Where they take a bunch of Canadians into custody.
but
Well, they'll soon be Americans anyway if Trump has his way, right? We're gonna make it the 52nd or 53rd state or whatever. I don't know.
no, who knows? But
Can't remember which one's first, that one or Greenland.
but the, but we are interested in helping overseas customers. We had a guy in Romania who has never played RPGs who bought our game like last week, and I got to talk with him for a little bit. He has watched a little bit of YouTube content and is interested in playing, and so we're hoping to introduce him to playing online at some point soon, and then encourage him to invite his friends. Yeah.
Right on. So let me pull it up here. Here's the website. Gorgeous website, by the way.
Thank you.
You can still get the basic PDF. You can still get the basic book, and then here's the advanced. And here's that Goblin King. So here's how they can get in touch with you.
Oh, good hair. That was a lot of fun. Do you see him in chat?
Oh, let me see. Let's catch up. Oh, that's right. Oh, Good Hair was was clutch. Who did you? He wrapped up like a giant or a troll or something,
No, I
right?
think you wrapped up the Lich.
The Lich.
Yeah.
He turned into a Naga and wrapped up the Lich and dragged him into this pool of water.
Yep.
I forgot all about that. That was awesome.
I think we have a picture of it.
Is it on your website?
No. I think it's one of the pictures you sent me.
Okay, so it's on my phone.
Yeah.
I had to get my phone on here.
But because it was at more or less the same time as the paladin was riding around dragging a screaming vampire.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you go to on the website though, you'd just go to the store. You'd select if you want to buy a PDF or physical. Like I said, we ship in the U.S. Shipping is pretty reasonable. $10 flat is the amount.
Did I have any hair when I came up there?
You did.
Okay, so I'm gone too
It
bad.
was not a lot.
I'm just looking at pictures of me with no hair in here.
The stash had mostly returned, but I believe you'd cut the top of your head.
I don't know if this is gonna show. This is some high tech stuff here on This Is
It was
Dunder.
very high tech, but yeah.
But yeah, you see the tower. You see everything to the left of the tower is what was inside the castle.
Oh,
And
I know how you could share it. Just email it to yourself,
okay.
and then you can pull it up on the screen.
Maybe I will force everybody to follow me on Twitter, and I'll share the posts there, and that way I can do some social media cross pollination.
Oh, and actually, that is one of the better ways to find out if Dunder Moose is going to have a stream is Twitter.
Yeah. Right on. So here's the store. Notice you can get a character sheet for free on here. So that's pretty cool. And yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about
and
these
right now-
beetles with the jewels on them. Those look like treasure coming at you.
Well, that's the intent. So they like to. Basically, they prey on goblins and pretend to be treasure.
Ah.
And
Shiny.
indeed. And they also prey on adventurers as a result.
I love it.
And you'll see analogs to a lot of classic monsters that are our own take. False doors are a good example,
Ooh, yeah.
which is, I believe, on the opening page of the website. So if anyone
Oh, yeah,
goes
yeah. I just closed it. Dag on it.
Yeah. But
We were up.
if
We
anyone
had
goes
it
there-
up for a while there. It was the door with the blood under and all the teeth.
Yeah.
One of the things, like one of the last things you showed me as I was getting ready to leave, was the timekeeping that you use. Now, Gary famously said you cannot have a meaningful campaign without timekeeping, and you know the bros hold 1-to-1 dear to our hearts, but you espouse 4-to-1 time. So tell me about that, how you came to it, and what it's done for your ongoing sessions.
Oh, sure. So I've been doing that for a long time. I've been doing that since at least 15, 20 years. And the reason is partly because someone smarter than me thought of it, as is true of most ideas. In this case, I believe it was the author of Birthright, or authors of the Birthright campaign setting, where they recommended
That I haven't played it before or read
They
it.
recommended monthly or seasonal domain play. And the reason was partly because of how their magic system worked, but partly also because of the construction speed of buildings and the movement speed of armies
Yeah.
as related to real life. And when I did some research for Horde Wars Advanced, I found that their conclusion that that was a good idea was true. Now, I didn't bother with research earlier. I just did it because it seemed like a good idea, right? But I looked into it and I'm like, well, how long does it really take to build a castle or a cathedral?
Yeah.
Or how long did it take to raise an army? The answer is a season, usually months, to raise an army. And it would be really boring if you did 1-to-1 time, which is the idea that for every day that goes by between game sessions, a day is going by in the game world. That's basically 1-to-1 time.
Yeah.
The problem with that is you will die of old age before you build a cathedral in the game. And that's stupid.
Or you've got to find one that's been ruined and then just take it over and
Fix it up.
Right.
But also, The other reason is, of course, because you're playing dwarves and elves who actually will outlive you, all going well in the game world. So you'd never really get to experience their kind of longer life goals because you'll die of old age in real life
Okay.
uh, at
So
1-to-1 time
so it's
speeds.
accelerated.
Right, right. It's accelerated both to account for these longer lived species or races,
Hmm.
but also to account for the real times for armies and for construction,
So you
for
get
shipbuilding.
larger downtime actions, more
Yeah,
grandiose wargaming as far as moving forces around a larger map,
correct,
that kind of stuff. Okay.
correct.
All right.
And um, and so you wind up with, I would say, both more realistic but also more exciting gameplay at the domain level because
What?
you have greater ability to impact the world in a
Hmm.
given domain action,
What's
assuming you have
the
the resources
trade-off
to do it at
there?
all. Yeah, yeah. And but the thing is, if you're doing like, let's pretend you had every other week game session for where you did domain play, right?
Hmm.
That'd be 25, 26 sessions a year, depending on if you off
Yep.
for a holiday or something.
Yep.
Okay. Nothing in the world stops you from doing within that month time that's gone by between sessions one shots that are happening in the same world all of that two
Right.
weeks. And your only limit, really, other than having to follow what's going on in the world in general, is your own free time and that 1 month time limit. They can't take longer than that in the session.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
but they're not gonna go
no,
unless they like get on a boat traveling to the other side of the world or something.
right. In which case, you continue it during domain play.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can do this and actually have a really lively world because you can have even different players in the same world as your domain sessions.
Hmm.
It can be the same players, but you could have different players experiencing the results of the domain players, and the domain players in turn will get to experience the results of these adventuring parties causing chaos.
Right on.
Um,
Yeah, that's where it's fun.
yeah,
And I think that's where strict timekeeping allows that. A lot of people don't understand that when I try to explain it to them. That like it opens up this dimension of the game where it's almost like two different games are happening at the same time and they're interesting to each other. The
yeah,
patrons are like always trying to figure out how can we get the attention of the session players? How can we get them to do our things instead of just their own? And the session players are like, "Wait a minute. You mean that's not just some dude the GM made up? There's a vampire lord that you have to check with them and they get to make some decision. Like it just
yeah.
pulls people in like no other."
Oh, absolutely. And the other way to do it, of course, is let's pretend you had more free time. Um, you could potentially have two different sessions meeting every week that are both involved in the same world
Hmm.
and both potentially taking domain actions. And that would get you a very complex world very quickly, especially if each play group is not necessarily aligned with one another.
Yeah.
But even if they were, at a minimum, you'll have two different factions with their own very different goals naturally. And as the players develop their own separate goals, you can get quite a lively world that way. And I've done this with even at larger scales with like three or more groups in a world as well. And it's really funny to hear the players' rivalry starting to emerge.
Yeah.
Or
Oh
when they
yeah.
start running into problems and they're like, is this the other play group? I'm not sure.
Yes. I love that. When
Um, yeah.
even if they are a get along gang amongst each other, when they hear there's another group of adventurers out there, they're like,
Yep.
"What do they have? Can we get their stuff? Are they after our stuff? What do we need to do to keep them from getting our stuff?"
Oh yeah.
Good stuff.
And one of the upsides to that is if you've got some players whose schedules may vary, it is possible for them to attend the other group.
Mhm.
Still be in the same world, still have information that's relevant, but maybe play a different character, maybe play the same one, depending
Yeah.
on the dynamics.
I think the trade off of the 4-to-1 versus the 1-to-1, one of the things is if you were banking on the timekeeping to be a thing that naturally generates people to roll up new characters, to have a stable instead of one, a 4-month time, like you said, You're
The
not going
four
to
to one
get
would be
one.
a month for every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not going to get, unless it's an extraordinary session, you're not going to get to the point where one of your guys is in time jail, because one session's probably not going to go more than a month, right?
Well, that's the thing though. One, we encourage people to play multiple characters.
Well, I mean,
In
clearly you
drop,
got a guy rolling up 50 of them,
yeah.
so it's
Well,
definitely on the
in
table.
dropship, it's more explicit, where we literally tell you you should roll up
Yeah.
two. You will have characters taken out. It's gonna happen.
What was that line
And
in Starship Troopers where he's like, "Remember your training, and you will come back alive"? It's like you are lying to these men.
yeah, yeah, but multiple characters, but also you have to remember that one of the advantages to 4 to 1 or 12 to 1, which is the other way to do it, which is seasonal,
Yeah,
um, you actually can have enough time go by to have the next generation emerging.
yeah,
And that is precisely what is happening, was already beginning to happen on the Gilded server, and
cool.
now we've forced to happen with a little time jump. But they were already having children that they met when they were like 10 years old, or rescued orphans who were
Hmm.
hitting their teens,
Yeah,
right? And were starting to like enter professions.
this
Uh,
this is reminding me of a video game that I butchered. It was on the Xbox 360 and it's called Massive Chalice. Have you heard of this game?
I have not.
So it's kind of like XCOM, where you have troops and you send them around, and if they
Yeah,
come
I'm
into
familiar with
conflict,
XCOM.
yeah, if they come into conflict, then it goes into like a isometric turn-based tactical game.
Yeah.
Um, so I was down for that, but I hadn't read the manual. I didn't know what I was doing. I was playing with my brother-in-law, and part of what happens as your fighters level up is you can marry them off to nobles, and they can kind of be in charge of the different hexes that you're in charge of, and then they would start having kids. Well, I didn't understand all that. I didn't realize the time frame my game was going on, and so one of them, he was a great fighter, but he was an alcoholic. That was just part of the mechanics. Like if you had alcohol, he was going to do well, but if you didn't, he was going to be angry and resist. And I was like, okay, well, I think the way that I get more troops is I marry him off to a princess, and then they start having noble children that can be in my army. And so I saw one. The guy's wife had died, and so I looked at the women in the kingdom, and I assigned one to him. And the game just keeps going, and the aliens keep attacking. They're like plant monsters or something, trying to take over my kingdom. And I'm like, how come I'm not getting any kids? What is going on over there? And I clicked on it, and then I realized, oh shoot, the guy's wife had died.
Oh
So he
no.
was like in his 40s, and I had given him an 8-year-old bride.
Oh no.
I was like, oh no, just by being an idiot. I had just married this guy off to a child bride.
Oh
And like
no.
by the time she was of child rearing age, he had died of old age.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happened is like I only had one soldier left, just a bunch of combats in a row, and I sent him out to fight, and like he could only see one hex around him, and he was really slow. And I'm like, what is going on? And my brother-in-law was like, hey, right click on that soldier. And I right clicked on him, and he was 86 years old. And I was like, oh no, oh no. I've just sent this venerable oldie hero of the Republic out to just die by himself. 86, he can't see, he can't move.
You did the equivalent of sending a World War II veteran to fight in Desert Storm
Right. I, I
by
was
himself.
I was the fifth crusade. So yeah, I was like, through sheer ineptitude, I was a horrible ruler in that game. But yeah, just for some reason, you reminded me of that when you were talking about generational. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing is, if you don't have, so here's what 12-to-1 timing opens up that most
Yeah.
conventional play will never like. If they want to do romance in a 5e campaign, it's usually because they're perverts, right? They want to make the DM have to do on woman voice and look them in the eye and seduce them or something. I don't know. But in a 12-to-1 game, it's like, no, you need a spouse, you need to be having kids, or else the line stops with you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. If you, especially if you're a human or a halfling or that kind of thing who isn't going to live a really long time. If you're an elf or
Yeah.
dwarf, it's less of a immediate concern.
Mm-hmm.
But
They got
also,
time to go digging in their mines and drinking their
yeah,
ale and all that stuff.
but we also have like basically random years of death. Now the player can know ahead. It says once you hit this age, roll this many dice. That's when you die of old age.
Got it.
But you could wind up with a character who dies at like 46 of old age. That could happen. So there's no guarantee in a relatively fast moving time frame that your character will just be around for years
Yeah.
of play. And so yeah, it's a good idea to have a backup character. And one of the more rewarding things I found in those kinds of games, I've played some that went as long as 2.5, 3 years in real life,
Oh wow. Okay.
with multiple groups, you know. And the for those kinds of games, one of the more rewarding things is being able to do next generation type play, where
Yeah.
maybe your original character carved a kingdom out of the wilderness and with his friends, and now you're playing the rulers of this brand new nation, dealing with all the people around you.
Wow. Yeah.
Some of whom might be pissed you took their land.
Hmm. It happens.
Yeah, yeah. And that can be quite a lot of fun, and especially if you kept reasonably good records of what you've done so far in the campaign, because the world just gets more and more in depth or interesting. There's a history there for the
Yeah.
players, a shared memory, if you will, or
I was
lore.
in theater in high school, um, and I found that if I went to a play that I had been in, my mind was going on how they were phrasing things, how I would have said that thing, the blocking, that kind of stuff. Do you find that when you play tabletop role playing games, is it hard to turn the designer part of your brain off? Is it hard to just get in the moment and enjoy it? Or is that something you're able to compartmentalize and say, I'm not going to think about this as a game designer, I'm just going to enjoy the moment?
It depends on the game, and for those watching, if you're interested, I have also written a war game or two. I've also consulted on several other RPGs.
Hmm.
So this is not actually my first game or second game written. This is simply the first two that we've published for money,
Right
and
on.
that someone else isn't publishing with help with me having assisted them. Um, but anyway, so just so you're aware, I have designed something else uh, more than once.
Right on.
Uh, I'm actually really curious to see how one of them went. Titans of Fallen Earth is
Ooh.
on Kickstarter. I think the Kickstarter's done.
I
I
backed
can
it.
good.
I
I
don't
can
know if let me see if you can get late pledges or not.
I I consulted on it and
Oh, nice.
designed the core dice system, which is quite different than Horde Wars. And I'm really curious to see what the authors did with it after that. I do know they changed it some because of some of the comments that I got sent by the author. I don't remember if he put his name on it or if he used his pseudonym, but yeah, it was that was really fun. I spent probably quarter of a year, third of a year helping him play test and develop a dice system.
Yeah, and I had Greg on my show. I'm really looking forward to that one coming out because the other thing that I'm doing on my own, I am not a game designer, but I'm trying to learn some of the stuff. My son has Down syndrome, and he loves Power Rangers. And I
Mhm.
got the Power Rangers game thinking he'd want to play it with me, but it's a little complex. And so I'm trying to like figure out what makes a mech game mechy. What makes a kaiju feel like a monster? Because I want to do a simplified version where we can emulate Power Rangers, Power Fantasies. And
Sure.
so I see this giant robots versus monsters, and I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
please. I am down for that.
But,
So,
to answer your earlier question about enjoying games,
yes, yeah, sorry. We got a field there, didn't we?
that's yeah. The yeah, I'm able to enjoy them, of course, but if it's a new game, in particular. Like, if it's an older game, I try to pay attention to how they design things because sometimes
Yeah.
there's good ideas that perhaps I'll use in some way. But for newer games, especially if I'm playtesting a system for someone else, I will generally tell you what I think, and I like I'm not going out of my way to hurt your feelings, but I'll tell you what I think, and if you don't like it, that's okay. Sometimes I'm wrong, as are all
Right.
humans. Sometimes you just might not like hearing something that's true.
Yeah. I find though, like especially if you're a creator, like 9 times out of 10, you start off by asking your friends and family, and they're like, "It's good," because they like you and they want you to feel good, and they may not even know if it's good or bad. Sometimes the criticism can be more valuable than the encouragement. Sometimes somebody that's willing to look at it and give you, not to take you down a peg, not to put you in your place, but just
Yeah,
to give you honest feedback to build you up and make you stronger,
yeah,
that's valuable. Not everybody sees that.
yeah. Well, it's actually one of the good things about playtesting, especially if you have a lot of people who have some who have never played RPGs at all, although there weren't lots and lots of those. There were some, and people who are used to playing other RPGs and have never tried your system and are ready to try it. That
Yeah.
that can be really useful feedback because if you just have the same group of playtesters, let's say you had 6 friends and you had them playtesting your game, you're going to
Mhm.
get a kind of feedback loop where you're just going to kind of match those 6 people's preferences and yours, and you may not actually make a good game. You might make a good game for that small group,
Yeah.
but or put another way, you'll start coming up with keywords and stuff that they'll all know what it means, but as soon as you get some random new person, they'll have no idea.
Right.
And you won't have explained it well because you're so used to that little group who has been
Hmm.
testing it.
Right on.
And so a lot of times, I play tested a game for a buddy like 4 months ago, and my like one of my criticisms for him wasn't so much for gameplay. There was a bit of that. There was some of the dice mechanics weren't aligned in a way that was fun. One of them just like slowed down gameplay
Oh,
compared to everybody else.
okay.
So like that probably needed some work. But my main criticism was you don't explain your terms anywhere I can find.
Right.
Like, I get that these all mean something, but you really need to put these somewhere where I can look at it so
Yeah.
I know as the player, what does this mean?
Yeah. Bold it the first time with a definition, and then
Yeah.
from then on, people will know. Right on.
But and it wasn't that they like were in the text and just were hard to find. It's just they weren't in the text.
It was just in the minds of the core group and
Right.
seemed obvious
Yes.
because you weren't looking at it with beginner eyes.
Yeah. And that was in that case. Hey Tom.
Thomas Roark.
Yeah. He also is in our general area,
Okay. He
and
wasn't one of the ones I played with, was he?
he was not.
Okay.
He was not, but you could if you wanted
It's
to.
hard because you meet people and you know their names, and then you see them online and then they get their handles, and it's like who's
No, that's just his name.
yeah.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
You get what you get with Thomas. That's who it
Yes.
is. That's who it's gonna be.
Yes. But he yeah, good guy. He actually started playtesting our space game initially. And then we came out with Horde Wars and he's been playing that, but I think he's excited for us to get the space game out soon.
You have a gift for getting people together. Like when I
Thanks.
said I'm coming up, you were like, "How many people you got?" And then I'll fill out the rest. And like they showed up, they were excited, they were ready to play. You've got play testers. How much of that is a skill for someone who wants to be a designer? Like if there's people watching this going, "Man, I wish I could do something like what Blackwall's doing." Where do you get this ability to just bring people together? Because I mean, these games are not. It's not like, hey, do you want to play Tech Mobile for 30 minutes with me on my Nintendo, right? It's like, hey,
Right.
this is going to take 2 to 4 hours. You guys want to get some food and come over.
Well, I'll give you an example in a sec, but first, Spencer, hi, good to see you. Would love to game with you again at some point online soon, hopefully, and I am planning to go near you in Texas for that con, and I'd love it if you'd sign up for one of our events once those get approved.
Rock on.
Or more than one's good. But but yeah, man, that's thank
Is
you
this
very
just
much.
something that you have to be an extrovert to do? I mean, because how many cons do you guys go to?
We vary. I think this year we're gonna do 5, maybe. There's 2 private conventions, which is to say
Private.
they're small conventions that are invite only. So
Cool.
we're doing 2, maybe 3 of those,
How do you
and
get on
then
that list?
it depends on the convention.
Do you know
Uh,
there's the secret handshakes? They're like, oh, we got to get Blackwell there.
no, one is somebody we did business with who runs
Oh,
a
okay.
personal convention. One is a more affluent guy who is a friend of one of our customers who
Okay.
advocated he invite us over. I mean, this dude has a
Dude, you're
base.
blowing my mind right now. There's this whole secret world
Yeah,
of shadowy conventions that we know nothing about.
this
I love it.
this this guy has 3 or 4 full game tables set up on one floor of his house
Cool.
with miniatures to support pretty much any genre of play and a full bar, and basically invites.
That's the answer to my question. That's how you get people to come over.
No, but that's so he'll put together an event and invite like
Yeah.
20 people, 14 people, and have them come
Cool.
and play, or 25 people, whatever it might be.
So he
And
gets in
that's
touch with you. He's like, I got some people coming over. I want to show them a new way to play.
yeah,
I heard you made Horde Wars. Can we make this happen?
yeah, yeah,
And you were like, sure.
yeah. And actually, in this guy's particular case, I'd followed him on Twitter for years previously because of the content he posted. So I actually vaguely knew of him prior to the introduction, which was pretty sweet.
Cool.
But so we're doing 5, maybe 6 cons this year. One's in
That sounds
Texas.
like a lot. I mean, that's.
Yeah, yeah. One's in Texas. That's the most distant.
Mhm.
One that we haven't signed up for yet, but we are seriously considering is in Minnesota. There's a couple, 2 or 3 private ones, and then there's one in Michigan that we were probably also going to do. Though we
Cool.
might not actually run a booth this time, we might just do events. Largely because we can configure our website to sell you our product remotely,
Yeah.
so we don't have to. And we can just hand it to you. The
Hmm.
transaction happened online. It
Right
was
on.
pickup that you arranged. um,
Cool.
and also, that particular convention charges a bit much for booths. Um, and then separately, we have some friends who are planning to go to Gen Con this year, and they should again be selling our books. They were selling them last year as well.
Cool.
But beyond that, how to do that if you're starting out as a game designer? One, meet go out of your way to meet other people who have designed successful products.
Hmm.
I don't mean necessarily that they gained a bunch of money, though that's good. I mean that they have products that you have heard of and liked. um, and that's a good place to start. So, one of the first artists, I think it was the second artist that Nate and I hired, was the basic expert. He did the
Yeah.
cover art for both Horde Wars Advanced and Horde Wars Basic. He did not do the bulk of the art in general, but he did both cover pieces
And
and
they're
some other work.
gorgeous.
They are. He did a great job. And he was able to introduce us to other people who were designing games and some other artists as well. And the same is true for the first artist that we hired. He introduced us to some people that he worked with who were designing games. We went to conventions and met people who were designing games deliberately. Like, we went to the test our games section and met people and tried their games, and we're like, and discussed the development process.
Right on.
Making connections like that can be really valuable. And then beyond that, invite people to play with you. I mean, I have done anything from putting an ad on the internet going, hey, we are playing games in this area. If you want to play with us, let me know. I have one or two fairly close friends, both ex-cons, who responded.
Right on.
And we've been playing together for years now. It's great. The same is true for random dude on bus. I looked at a guy and was like, he looks like he likes tabletop RPGs. Hey, you want to come play D&D later? Yes, he did.
Right on, man. Have you watched Secrets of Blackmore, the
Yeah,
documentary?
yeah.
I love how Arneson got his group together. He had checked out Strategos from the library.
Hmm.
It's like this.
Oh, he looked at the people who checked it out.
Yeah, he's like, who else checked this book out? And he saw their names. He looked them up in the phone book. Back then, there was such a thing as the phone book, where people would put their names in the book, and
Yep,
you could look them up and call them. And
yep.
so he just like made a list. He's like, the people that check this out are interested in war games. I'm gonna call them and invite them over to my house. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And the
find your
same is
tribe.
true. But the same is true. Like in general, I don't. You don't necessarily have to be an extrovert, but I would say that you have to deliberately seek out people to come and play with you. And in many cases, I think in my experience, probably about half of the people who want to come play with you will stick, will want to keep playing.
Hmm.
Others may not like the particular game, might not be into your style, might just have personal issues come up, might switch jobs, whatever it might
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
Varies quite a bit, but about half of everyone that I've personally invited who said yes to the initial invitation stuck around to play for years, or in some cases decades.
Cool.
So it's not hard if you try. And obviously, what's the word? Go for a place where you can like shoot fish in a barrel. Like
Hmm.
go hang out at a game store and invite people,
Yeah.
or go or go.
Maybe not at your spinning class or.
I mean, it depends. We had I think two or three of the people I play with now were random people who wandered into my buddy's church.
Yeah.
And he's like, one, I believe he told them about Christ, but two, he was like, "Hey, do you want to come play RPGs with us?" And they've been now gaming with us for years. Brandon, my friend Brandon's one of them,
Cool.
and he was a person who randomly met a friend who referred him to me because he thought he'd like this kind of game.
Have
Right?
you found there's a lot of Christians playing these games lately?
Um, Probably, I would say my group, the two groups I regularly game with in person, I would say are about half.
Okay. Because there's like two kinds of Christians when you talk about role playing games, right? Like there's the ones that are like, okay, what is that? Sounds fun. And then there's the kinds that are like, I vaguely remember something about the devil. Right?
Well, one, it is helpful that I am not responsible for the Dungeons and Dragons intellectual property. So a lot of that
There you
baggage
go.
I can avoid without the name.
Right. Yeah.
If
We're not
I
playing
were
that
in
one.
charge of it, it would be run very, very differently,
Hmm.
and also probably
Amen
more
to that.
profitably. But that's aside. Because they have advantages, right? They've got name recognition, they've got
Yeah.
market share, they have a lot of things that Nate and I have to work to even kind of get a little of, right?
Hmm.
With that kind of advantage, you could do quite a banger of a game as far as
Yeah.
being
Bradford Walker
popular,
calls it the
recognized.
Bradford Walker calls it the network effect. That like
Yeah,
every other game really has to take them into account because
yeah,
and it's kind of a shame that they're squandering their goodwill on
it is.
what, to all intents and purposes, looks like they are trying to turn it into a video game.
Yeah, pretty much.
We've
And
already
and
established if you're playing real D&D or real tabletop role playing games, they can offer things that a video game just cannot.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. So that's an issue, but also the reality is that tabletop RPGs, which are fairly new as a genre of game,
Hmm.
are probably, I would say, one of the most fulfilling games, which may sound strange, but by which I mean though, I think it is possible to play tabletop RPGs generally speaking, not like one specific one, although that's possible as well, and basically never get bored. I don't mean
Yeah,
not have a boring moment. I mean that you actually want to keep playing until you die of old age.
it's interesting and exciting the whole
Yeah.
time. So I feel like we've kind of come full circle back to my original question. What is it about this hobby that sets it apart again, right? Oh, cool. Bradford's in the chat. Welcome, man. He
Hello.
says more tabletop NVIDIA people need to study and grok network effects. It's a far more powerful thing than they think, but it still has limits. And the thing that this game can offer is the ability for your players to do anything they want to. They can try anything they want.
Yeah.
There's a reason that guys that have been playing this for a while, even if they start off enjoying the plot, the railroady story, that over time they move away from that. And that's because that is something a video game can do, and it offers it much more conveniently. You don't need to bring the Cheez-Its. You don't need to get 6 people to come into your house. You can just turn on your Xbox and play Baldur's Gate 3 for a little while, and you can have almost the exact same type of curated experience
Right.
that style of play. But when you get sandboxy, when you get strict timekeeping, whether it's 1-to-1, 4-to-1, or 12-to-1, you, especially with the patrons and the people playing against each other, like, you will unlock a level of fascination that even a video game cannot compete with. And the other thing is, as I said, they are purposefully putting psychological hooks into video games. Like, I got addicted to Destiny 2. The loot boxes, the time sequenced events where you can only get such and such if you visit Zur at the tower between this day and this day. All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it reminds me of that meme from the cartoon where, like, the two superheroes are flying and they see jets and they're like, "Look what they need to mimic just a fraction of our power." Like, role playing games are fascinating on their own without pulling these crazy psychological tricks,
Yeah.
without having to, hit you. I mean, it just harnesses the power of your own imagination, and it's the kind of, when it goes right, you will be in the shower and you will think of something and you're like, "Oh, my character needs to do this," and you'll rush out to text your DM, "Here's what
Yeah.
I'm doing during downtime. Don't screw this up for me." you know
Oh yeah.
um,
And that's one of the cooler aspects of the hobby. And the other thing is, if you do it right, the game master also gets to be surprised by some
yes,
of or many of the outcomes.
yes, yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
I vigorously agree with that.
Yeah. And if you're wondering what I mean, you can read the Game Master chapter in the Horde Wars Advanced, which will detail that a bit, but also in a general sense, lean into some procedural generation or lean into surprises that your characters may pursue unique goals, the player characters, that you did not anticipate. Or you
Mhm.
might roll a personality for a villain that makes them quite different than you initially imagined. Go with that. Do that, and you will enjoy the game more. And the same is true for like plot hooks. Like, let's pretend a baron is sneaking out at night and going to the local tavern regularly, and the players don't know why, and you don't know why either. This is the event. This is what is occurring. They've
Yeah.
learned that, and they don't know why. And then one day they follow him. Now you actually need to know why, and what you should
Yeah.
do is give your players a four-sided die. It has to do with the limits of human memory. Give your players a four-sided die. Think of 3 or 4 possible outcomes. 3 if you want to weight one, if you want one to be more likely than the others.
Hmm.
Tell the player what each die set represents. For example, on a 1 or a 2, the Baron is meeting with his lover. On a 3, the Baron is meeting with a cult he's joined.
Hmm.
On a 4, he's hiring assassins and planning a coup. These are all very different plots, each of
Yeah.
which requires him to visit this inn regularly, and then have the players roll openly in front of you. Let them roll that die. You've already established the odds. You already know
Hmm.
right when you did that. And then whatever they roll is true. That's what's now happening.
And then you just roll with it.
Yeah. And
Right.
then the surprise comes is when you get to more details, like what kind of cult is it? Say, do the exact same thing. You don't have to decide all this stuff ahead. You don't have to think of everything. Do right then go, all right, well, what are some kinds of cults? Maybe like a blood sacrifice cult, or maybe a cult who wants to turn themselves into undead or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
and then have them roll, and then that's true. But only do it when it matters, like when they go into the room to see what the cult's like.
Yeah. Then you
And
get to
when
be
they do
surprised
that,
along with them.
well,
And I think
you
there's so
will.
there's
But
oh go
but
ahead. Sorry.
but most importantly, if you do this as a game master, and I encourage you to try it if you don't believe me, you will see your players sit up and get engaged in a way they were not before with the exact same plots.
Right. Yeah. I've said this before, but I've never heard players bragging to each other after a game about some plot that the DM invented or some twist that they introduced. It's always about crazy stuff that they did or stuff that the dice, chanced. And the other thing that will happen if you do that, well, first you need an improv muscle. You need the confidence to throw it to the dice like that and trust yourself that you will be able to respond to whatever comes up. I think one of the things that you can do to strengthen that muscle, which sounds like you have been doing your whole life automatically, is read this kind of speculative fiction that
Yeah,
this game is trying to emulate so that when you do cast about, you have something lying right there that you can pick up, like a well worn, smooth stone fits in your hand. I know what the cult's doing because I read H.P. Lovecraft or whatever.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
fill that net behind your head of little tools that's waiting to be picked up. And once you do that, it might feel scary the first time you do that, but once you do that and your brain gets the reward of seeing all your players sit forward and you get the reward of being surprised and interested in what's going to happen next, it is very difficult to go back once you've had that experience because then you trust yourself and you're like, I want to see this world take on a life of its own. And it
Absolutely.
becomes what Gary described as a superior alloy, the world created by you and your friends in the moment.
Yes. And by the way, you'll see in chat there, they're talking about rolling for encounters.
Yeah.
Yes. In Horde Wars, we do use d20s for treasure and for random encounters. And you do
Okay.
not want a 20. That usually involves an exploding die.
Oh
Though
man.
for treasure, you might want a 20. It usually gets one of the rarer items. But
Yeah, looks like the roll to 20 is dragon, lich, or T-Rex level of monster.
it is.
So you played with Brown Wizard Winston, and I remember he
I
said
have.
something about you guys. They were riding on a boat. They were trying to like save some time by going up the coastline on a boat instead of. They thought it was going to be more dangerous to go overland, but then they hit something crazy in the boat. Did they roll a 20? Is that
They
is that
did.
what happened when they hit the sea monster?
They did, and they fought an Arctic worm that basically is an aquatic creature that normally burrows through ice with heat,
Okay.
causing the ice to melt and be water around it. But sometimes they go swimming in the ocean, and the hint is in a rapidly approaching fog bank.
Oh man.
And they fought this thing, and it killed everyone except the captain's son and the other player characters. It killed the captain. If there was any other crew, it killed them, and it ate Winston's character. And then
He probably had it
he
coming.
had turned into a wyvern to go fight it, and it killed
Oh,
him one shot. He had
wow.
60 hit points as a wyvern, and he got critted on, I think, and he just was dead.
Just
Um,
done.
but But then we had one of those plot things where we rolled a d4 because the question is now: is the worm still hungry?
Or
Right?
did it get full?
Or is he
Is
is
it
was
just
is
gonna
he
do some
sated
like
now?
lava burp and swim
Right.
on?
So the players rolled. I told them what the odds were. They rolled, and they rolled that it was full. It was done. It had enough of a snack. It's going to go.
Okay.
And so as a result, the players hiding below deck and the captain's son survived.
Now, if you're resistant to poison, is eating a wyvern kind of spicy? Is that like
um,
having a jalapeno?
Generally speaking, you can eat a beast in our game, but you cannot eat a monster, if
Got
that
it.
helps. Wyverns being beasts.
So Brian Renninger says commitment to raw includes abiding by the random table. I realized this when I rolled
Yep,
cloud giants for a low level party. Okay, here we go. Worked out
absolutely.
great.
Absolutely. Now, the only
Cloud
flexibility we give
giant.
the game master in that regard, as I know we're near time,
Yeah, we are.
Is
We're coming up. We got 5 more minutes.
yeah.
EV Mux only gives me 2 hours, people. Sorry.
But the thing that we give the game master is if there is more than one stat block provided for a given type of beast or monster,
Hmm.
the game master is free to appropriately customize the encounter accordingly. So, for example, let's pretend you rolled 4d8 goblins. It would be
Yeah.
ridiculous if you populated that with 32 goblin kings.
Yeah.
That would be stupid. We do tell you not to do that.
Right.
But you could, for example, have, let's say you rolled 32 and you had 12 goblin cannibals
Hmm.
and 10 goblin warriors and 4 goblin champions, and you can just basically break it down by the various goblin stat blocks for the party. And the same is true for like ghosts or for if you rolled generically dinosaurs, those are usually specific ones.
Hmm.
Or if you rolled zombies, there's like 6 or 7 zombie stat blocks or something. So you can to some degree customize the difficulty for certain rolls. Other
Yeah.
ones, nah, you rolled a dragon, guys. I guess you're gonna die now.
Run. If running isn't on the table, your players aren't good enough. They need to learn. Sometimes this foe is beyond any of you.
Sometimes,
All
sometimes,
right.
and
Well,
that's fun, actually. The
it is.
chance of death in
Well,
the
it,
game.
it forces the players to take the game seriously and not just do the story, but actually learn the game.
Oh yeah,
So, all right, guys. Well, I got through all my questions. Thanks for coming and being a part of our show with us here. Thanks, Blackwall, for jumping on This Is Dunder Moose. You've been on some pretty big shows, man. You were on Black Lodge Games.
oh thanks.
So make sure you guys look. Search them on YouTube. You'll see more stuff than just. And they probably asked you better questions than I did, but it was fun having you guys here with us. If you liked this, let us both know by hitting the thumbs up. If you are not subscribed, you can always hit that button if you want more mustachioed interview entertainment. Tomorrow night, Scudder for Mike will be joining me. He's been doing a bunch of stuff, and so he may have some recriminations because I might have cast a deciding vote in the Bro XT against his entry. So we'll have to hash that dirty laundry out. But
One thing,
yeah,
Brian, you are absolutely correct. I see that in chat. The dragon could be young or weaker. It could be disinterested. There is, in fact, such advice in the Game Master chapter in our book. But also, it could be the opposite.
I'm gonna throw your link back in the chat real quick.
And
So,
thank you, Harold.
guys, go ahead and check out blackwallgames.com. Pick up Advanced if you want a hard copy. Pre-order that, and we will see you guys next time on This Is Dunder Moose.